Joining us now on the morning show is Peter Obi, 2023 presidential candidate of the Labour Party and former governor of Anambra State. Good morning, Mr. Peter Obi. Thank you very much for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning, Ruben and the team. Thank you very much for the honor of inviting me.
Well, quickly, yesterday we were discussing your message to the nation, and this morning Ayo has referred to it, that a new Nigeria is possible and that our situation is not hopeless. A strong message of hope. But this morning I would like you to start by sharing with us how you have been lately. I've seen you in Princeton University, I've seen pictures of you in the East, and your thoughts on the cases in court, on the judgment, particularly at the presidential election petition level, and everything else, including this big issue about discovery for use of the president's credentials from Chicago State University.
Well, my first reaction, I will take it one after the other. Number one is the issue of how am I feeling. I feel very positive about the future of Nigeria, like I mentioned in my message. And I put it to people ask me about the judgment by this and everything, and I said, I remain positive. Because when I look at what is happening now, and comments of respected, highly respected, I would say, and less respected Nigerians, and Nigerians in generality, it underscores the erosion of value that comes to the heart of the urgency of building a new Nigeria, where things will be properly done based on people saying the truth, doing things rightly, within the laws and behavior that is required of a modern society. So for me, I feel positive. On other areas, and maybe as we go along, I will clarify what is happening and everything. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Welcome, Mr. Peter Obi. Now, just to ask you, because this is a big topic currently with regards to the fuel subsidy removal, the attendant effect on Nigerians, the response by organized labor. Yesterday, they met with the federal government and they said they were going on a mother of all strikes starting tomorrow if their demands were not met. I'd like to ask you a question with regards to what you would have done, because during the campaign season, you described fuel subsidy as organized crime and that you were going to remove it. What would you have done differently? So would you have still gone ahead to remove it? Would the timing have mattered? What would you have put in terms of palliatives if you had been elected as president?
Well, let me reiterate my position. And I said, fuel subsidy is organized crime, as it was being practiced even before now. If you go and look at my tweet of September 19, 2022, and then read my manifesto, it showed clearly, manifesto for Labour Party, showed clearly the way we would have approached it. First, subsidy is organized crime. I've said this repeatedly, and that is going to be removed. I mentioned it during the campaign. I mentioned that what we are consuming is far above what we are supposed to be consuming. And if you listen to Governor Isaiah Gudaya's interview recently, he said that a friend of his who was involved in fuel subsidy gains and everything told him that it is criminal, that he's even tired of making money through that type of crime. It should be removed. Which shows there's a criminality side of it and corruption side of it. Then if you look at, since the subsidy has been removed, our consumption is just about half of what it is, which again shows that what we are consuming was. So for me, the approach would have been, and that's what I said, go and read my tweet, is to remove the corruption and criminal side of it, remove the excess demand that is not factual. By doing this, you would have reduced it by 50%. The remaining 50% is what would have been able to, after consultation with various stakeholders, been able to find a way to, in an organized manner, remove and showing the proceeds of the removal or the gains of the removal to be invested in a critical development areas, education, health, and pulling people out of poverty. People need to see that transparency of transferring from here to here, the gains and everything. And when you do it in an organized manner, with proper palliative that are well structured, thought after, not just haphazardly, you would have been able to see Nigerians go along with you. One of the things we are suffering with this announcement is what I can call announcement effect. You see, policies like these are not what you just announce haphazardly. There are things you thought through and everything. That's what we would have done as Labour Party.
Okay, so Mr. Peter Obi, I would also like you to sound off on probably some level of specifics as regards the kind of palliatives you'll have even put in there in the first place. What are the kind of targeted palliatives? And let's talk about this floating the naira, the exchange rate conundrum, where we are today. Things have gone really south. Formerly, naira to the dollar, we know the threshold as at 2015, but now it's over 1,000 naira to the dollar. The naira has taken a tremendous beating. What would you like to say about this? You've also talked about, fraudulent activities in the foreign exchange market and all of that. What would you do precisely, probably step-by-step empirical approach to the naira as we speak today?
Well, again, my dear friend Rufai, congrats, I heard you're now a doctor. So you're going to be more difficult on dealing with. So let me tell you, Mr. Rufai, first is that you can't float a currency you don't have supply with. It's like building a non-gated house in a criminal-ridden society. You have to have a defense mechanism. Nobody floats what you don't supply, you don't have supply. I believe, I wouldn't even, not just saying what we would have done, but I believe that now we have new CBN team. They have to look at the overall monetary policy, which, if they focus on their job, which is exchange rate, inflation, and everything, I know, it is again not something you announce haphazardly. It's something you look at. Nobody flows his currency without having adequate supply. When you don't have adequate supply, there were pressures, there were criminality in our exchange rate regime. Again, we should have worked on eliminating those criminality and excesses in our foreign exchange regime because there is strong unmet demands. The naira was under pressure and a bit overvalued. Everybody knew that. So what you would have done is to devalue the currency. We were at 4.12 before now. A devaluation to about 600 or thereabouts would have been it. We are trying to manage the supply by making sure that we deal with issues that is what controls your exchange rate. You find the simple thing is your reserve. And what controls your reserve is your export. You have avenues and things that you would have exported. You're supposed to export from your oil to other minerals to everything, is to encourage those things that will help to start dealing with issue of any more foreign exchange while trying to manage what you have, rather than just leaving it open and say market forces. I can tell you, not even in the developed world have anybody left this currency to market forces, because sometimes you might not control it. And now it's difficult to control, because you cannot reverse your policy that you've sent now. So that's why I said this is an announcement effect that would have been well thought through by a proper economic team and consultation properly before announcing. You don't just announce these things in a market square and say we're going to do this.
Okay, Mr. Peter Obi.
Governance is different from that.
Mr. Peter Obi, I want to get you right, and that's why I asked specifics. Are you saying we should have devalued the currency to over 600 and go to look for money
That's
to
what I would have done. Go and
currency?
read my listen. Yes, I would have done that.
So you're saying that go to look for money to...
I would have devalued the currency, still stay where we with a management form, making sure that whatever is available is used by the real sector.
But in all
removing the criminality, I can tell you, I know in that regime, I know, yes.
Mr. Peter, but in all fairness, to this government, where will the money have come from for them to now be able to keep that rate, owing to the fact that the CBN report coming out saying that we are so encumbered that we probably only have around 3 or 4 billion in our reserves to be able to spare. So where will the money come to now defend the currency when we have a backlog of close to 6, 7, 8 billion dollars in the first place? So are you saying you will have borrowed more to now defend the currency?
I'm involved a little bit in finance, and I know that in every country of the world, they're even trying to borrow money, even using a company. It doesn't matter what yes, you can do that. You are not borrowing to defend, just to defend the currency, but to stabilize it temporarily while you're working aggressively on your exports. It's not everywhere. We are not the first to do it. You can do that while you're working aggressively on your export, which, if you look at what people are stealing and doing today, if we're able to do it, and remember what I said, manage the criminality side of it, like whether it's rand tripping, anything. If you do it properly, I can tell you, you will be able to do it. And also, removing the fact that dollar has become what you can call underground currency of our economy. It shouldn't be. We have a currency called Naira. So you should remove it. All these things that people are using dollars to do, which are not productive, should be removed. If you remove it, I can assure you can strengthen the currency. But you have today, even if you want to do party primary, people are sharing dollars. If you have these people, that is not our currency. And that should be a stiff penalty in dealing with that issue. If people earn it legitimately, let them spend it the way they want. If people are doing business and earn it, let them spend it the way they want. But in a situation where it has become even a means of, call it corruption and criminality in our system, we should be carefully manage it.
Mr. Obi,
but if you earn it legitimate, like I said, even if you want to put it in your pillowcase, go and put it there. If you want to do it the way you feel you're safe, that's fine. But illegitimate one, if we remove all that, we can manage the rate. While we work on our export in order to strengthen our currency. Countries have gone through this.
Mr. Obi, to address the fallouts of the decision to remove fuel subsidy, the Tinubu administration has been taking a number of steps, particularly in terms of palliatives. 5 billion naira to the states to provide palliatives in the states. Teachers and workers in tertiary institutions have been told that their salaries will increase by certain percentages dated back to January 2023. Only yesterday, the president first said 25,000 naira provisional wage increment for 6 months for average low-range workers, but that has been changed. That No worker is low grade. Everybody is important. So that has been increased to 35,000. 15 million households are to be given a total of 75,000 naira between October and December. Now, what are your thoughts on some of these steps, palliatives, that government has introduced or has promised to introduce in some instances to ameliorate the hardship occasioned by fuel subsidy removal?
Well, let me not go into. I have not been opportune because I've been traveling to be able to read the details of yesterday's announcement. It was just on yesterday. And like I said, I was traveling all day yesterday. So I've not been able to look at it. The last palliative I know the president did issue was the one of when he did 75 billion to 75 million companies, and the one of I think 50,000 to companies. That was the last one that I was involved or I listened to. And for me, the one of yesterday, for me, is the issue of the temporality of it. Because if I'm correct, he said this will last for 6 months. Or is it going to be permanent? Are we now saying we've changed or a minimum wage?
Well, it looks like there's a problem with audio connection there. We'll take a short break, and then when we return, the conversation with Mr. Peter Obi will continue. Stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show here on the Arise News channel. Our guest is still Peter Obi, 2023 presidential candidate of the Labour Party and former governor of Anambra State. Mr. Peter Obi, thank you very much for staying with us. Well, before we took that break, you were talking about the provisional nature of these 6 months, 35,000 naira for federal workers that the federal government promised yesterday. And you were raising a number of questions. Please go ahead.
What I said before is that if you look at what this government has been doing since inception, you could see announcements with limited thinking, which again produces limited outcomes. The temporality of it is like announcement effect. You're just moving, and suddenly, even just yesterday, like you said, 25 naira and 35 naira, that means it wasn't thought through. But let me go back to the one I said I listened to the announcement. A few weeks ago, they announced that they're going to do 75 billion, if I'm right, to 75 companies over the next 1 year. They've done 150,000 naira to what they call supposedly small businesses. I will call it because it was micro businesses and things like that they're going to give 50 million. And then, of course, they've come up with this new one. When I looked at that one, my question is 75 billion to 75 companies. Are these companies in Ikorodu or the ones in just Kaduna or in Nnewi? Because for a huge country like Nigeria, you're going to look, if it's looking at manufacturing outfits, you're going to be looking at about 10,000 companies, which for you to make any meaningful impact, you need to take about 1,000 of them and provide them the same 1 billion each, which will be about 1 trillion. If you talk about micro and small businesses, you have about 40 million registered and unregistered in that cluster, and they're your engine of growth. And if you're going to start creating jobs and start turning around things, 50,000 today is approximately $50. So what you need to do is to at least, since there are 40 million, take 10% of them and give them at least 1 million naira each, which is $1,000 as of today, so that you can start meaningfully trying to even create two jobs by making sure that each of them are working. So things have to be done differently, and it must be thought through with proper consultations and economic team that have sat down and analyzed this. It's not just announcing that, oh, we've done this to states, there must be, again, a coordination between the federal, the state and local governments in trying to pull through this difficult time.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Peter Obi. The questions we've asked you with regards to reviewing some of the policies or decisions by this particular administration, you seem to have some very sound responses to these questions. Now, the president, in his inaugural speech, had said that he was willing to work with opposition party members who didn't win the election to move the country forward. Has an invitation like that been extended to you, and would you be willing, for the collective good of the nation, to offer some of your ideas and options to this particular government to move Nigeria forward? And second of all, very important statement you made during your appearance at Princeton University, that the leaders in Nigeria must have the right qualifications. That can be a bit vague. When you say right qualifications, are you saying that they should upgrade the minimum standard for who would become president or governor from being just having a school leaving certificate, or qualifications in terms of bringing experience, what you bring to that office? So just those two questions. Would you be willing to work with this government for the good of this nation, because people are suffering, with your great ideas to work with this government? And second of all, what do you mean by right qualifications for whoever it is that should lead this nation?
Okay, let me go ahead and tell you. We are at a point where we're challenging the process. These are part of what makes a nation. The process through which people come into office or assume or achieve anything is far more fundamental than what they do thereafter. It is important that the people come through the right door and not just jump into through the window and start saying, okay, let's move on, let's clean it up, let's do this and everything. No. So we're challenging the process, and that has to come to a logical end before any other thing. And it has to be something that people will seemingly, that's why I said we have to begin by doing the right things. And not doing the right things is having the right process. On issue of qualification, I never said anything with regards to improving the degree or doing this. The issue of qualification is the issue of leaders making statements, doing things that are honest and truthful. This is an issue of honor and integrity. It is the foundation on which you build society. If you look at what is happening in Nigeria today, there's so many issues of certificates, age, all sorts of one falsification or the other, all over, within the leaders. There's no way people can be doing this and be able to do the right things, because that means they live in a falsified life. And that is not good morally, and a sign it should be given to the society. There's so many great people in the world who did not go to school. And I can tell you, America today, one of the highest, or I would say the greatest president America has ever had, is Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln did not go to a formal school. In fact, his entire education is less than 1 year formal education, because he came from a very extremely poor family. His education was by borrowing books and everything, which he did later. But he was able to show, if you read his history, you show that he came from a very poor home and did not have formal education. He didn't have to say he read the PhD here or he did this one here, and then there's an argument like what we're having in all over Nigeria today, which is bringing the credibility of our nation into question. If you come to the UK, one of the greatest prime ministers, Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill is known to have had a poor academic record. In fact, his academic record was very bad that his father had to enlist him in the army. Even when he went to take an exam to be able to be enlisted into the British Military Academy, he sat it 3 times before he could pass. Eventually, he became a prime minister, became a great prime minister. You go to the corporate world, the biggest company we have today in terms of market value is Apple. The founder is a dropout, a school dropout. His history shows that. The second biggest company is Microsoft. At least Apple today is about 2.9, if I'm right, about 2.9 trillion company, when African GDP is about 2.9. So it's about the same thing as African GDP. The second biggest company is Microsoft, founded by Bill Gates. Bill Gates is a university dropout. It's written there. It's not, there's no question. The fourth richest person in the world, Larry Ellison, is a poor person. The mother had to give up for adoption when he was 9 months.
All right. So that's...
So you don't really have to have all the degrees in the world to be great. But you need to be honorable about your past so we can know who exactly you are and everything. The world are bound by great people who have poor past and no education, and that forms part of their greatness.
All right. We'll take a quick break, just so we can get back that connection. And when we come back, we'll continue to speak to Mr. Peter Obi, 2023 presidential candidate of the Labour Party and former governor of Anambra State.
Okay, great. So we have Mr. Peter Obi back. I just want to ask you 2 questions. Number 1 will be concerning what happened in Niger. What should we have done differently? Step-by-step approach, how we should have settled the matter of Niger out. And secondly, I want to also ask you, what would you have been doing to stimulate the Nigerian economy as we speak today? Because it's at an all-time low. And thirdly, I want to take you back to the last question I asked you, because I want more clarity on that question. You said we should have devalued the Naira to over 600 and look for money to defend the Naira. How long could we have done that for, defending that currency, when we know that the factors, the market forces, are really hard on the Naira and it's just a matter of time? So those 3 questions are, as we start to wrap up.
If I forget any of them, Rufai, I will call you. On issue of Niger, Rufai, I will not go. First, let me say it. I am completely against military intervention as a process of leaders emerging. Totally. I'm a believer in a democratic process and through an elected, genuinely elected process. I know in Africa, at times you can actually question whether there's a difference between military coups and elections, what we call elections, the way we do it with the rascality. However, I'm a Democrat and I believe in democracy, and that should be the process. Will I go to war? Again, capital no. Reason being, I'll go. Reason being that we have war at home. You cannot go to war externally when you have war at home. If you look at our budget this year, because I want to link it to what you said about the economy, our budget this year is 21.5 trillion. About that. Our revenue, expected revenue, is about 10 trillion, which means we have a deficit of 53.5%, which is about 11.5 trillion. That's what you're lacking. That is all. Rufai, I read from the President National Security Advisor that we are losing 400,000 barrels of crude oil every day. If that is true, if you multiply by our benchmark, which is below the pricing today, that's about $30 million a day. And you put $30 million in 1 year, it will be about $10.9 or $11 billion. $11 billion. About that. About $11 billion. If you say we just said it's $1,003, but let's use 900. If you use 1,000, you have 11 trillion naira, which I know is not all your money, but what does it show? So you have a deficit of 11.5. You're losing about 11 trillion somewhere. And then what it then shows, Rufai, is that if you put this, consider illegal mining of our minerals all over the country by foreigners and locals alike, consider other revenue leakages that is coming, what it then shows is that if you fight this war internally and be able to deal with this, you can be able to generate a revenue of between 20 and 25 trillion. By the time you now decide to even borrow additional 10 to make it 35 trillion, which is where our budget should have been today, I can tell you, not only that have you reduced your borrowing to 30%, but all those things are achievable. So for me, the only war Nigeria needs now is war on insecurity and war in economy. And I'm going to deploy everything that is available to ensure that we win it. Because that is the core of our problem. You mentioned how we're going to defend the Naira. Rufai, if you today secure Nigeria, deal with issue of all revenue leakages, brought a bit of stability in it, I can tell you, you stabilize your currency. One is that you'll be able to export more and more revenue that will be able to increase your reserve and have available. You'll be able to have Nigerians all over the world bringing in their own investment, and you'll be able to attract foreign investors. You're going around trying to bring in foreign investors in an insecure war-torn area. Does not work. If you do the proper things, tackle the supposed problems, you'll be able to have additional funding, not just to be able to manage. It's done everywhere, Rufai. And you say step by step and give you how will you turn around the economy. That's just I tell you. If you look at what I've been saying from beginning, moving it from production, from consumption to production, this is the way you start it.
Mr. B.
You first have to, government will tell you today, we are short of revenue, our revenues are not this. Rufai, if you do the right things, you will generate additional revenue. And the way to do it is step by step what I'm telling you today. People will say to me, you said you are going to put 1 trillion to 1,000 companies, 1 million to 4 million SMEs, it will be 4 trillion. How are you going to do it? I've just shown you that if you're able to manage the leakages within your own system, you'll be able to generate more income, and your borrowing will help to ensure that you allocate up to 50-60% of your annual budget to area of production. And if you do that for a period of 1 to 3 years, you will see that you generate more revenue. The budgeting today, both for federal and state of Nigeria, should be a combined budgeting of not less than 50 trillion, which is just about $50 billion annually. If you compare the size of the country, and if you get it right, I can tell you,
Mr. B,
it is not as, it is
Mr. B,
difficult.
if you can hear me.
But you have to do it.
Mr. B, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, we're already overrunning,
I
but I wanted
you.
to ask you a personal question. The Princeton event was in honor of Chinua Achebe,
Yes.
and you quoted him, playing on his
Yes.
statement. You said there will be a country. Again, optimism on your part. But about the same time, the Anambra International Airport, was named after Chinua Achebe. Quickly, if you can do that in 30 seconds.
What did you say? Just 1 minute. That's...
No, your reference to Chinua Achebe in Princeton.
Yeah. Well, if you look at my tweet yesterday, I congratulated Governor Soludo for naming the airport after Chinua Achebe. I said that in prison, I maintain that what Chinua Achebe lamented for 40 years ago is still there today and is worsening. Like I said, and I quote, he said, the problem of Nigeria is simple and squarely leadership. That there's nothing wrong with the Nigerian character. Nothing wrong with the land, water, air, or anything else, except simply the Nigerian leadership rising up to their responsibility, challenges of personal example, which is a mark of true leadership.
Well, on that
These are
note,
the issues we are suffering today.
On
We
that
have a
note-
situation where things are bad and needs to be dealt with.
Well, on that note, Mr. Peter Obi, we would like to thank you very much for joining us on the morning show today.